The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, joined by my co-host today, Gray Oldenburg. We got a lot of stuff to cover, Gray. The NBA offseason has kicked off. Recruiting in football is still going hard for the state of Alabama and around the country. We're going to focus in on the state of Alabama just to kind of kick things off with the offseason with recruiting in college football. And then we have a video game to announce. That was, I think, a surprise for us this week at the very least to hear it was going to be coming to PlayStation and Xbox. But let's start off with the NBA offseason. Instead of trying to break this down, go through the draft, pick worst pick, best pick, all that stuff, best NBA free agency signing, all that type of stuff, let's just have an all-encompassing discussion here of what's happened in the NBA offseason thus far. Gray, who has had the best offseason for you thus far in the NBA, encompassing the draft and what they've done trade-wise and in free agency?
I think the team that has transformed themselves the most is the Houston Rockets, in my opinion. They've transformed themselves. I know they were a 2 seed this past year, and they had that really good young core alongside Jalen Green and Tari Eason and Amin Thompson and Jabari Smith and all that young core, but adding Kevin Durant, re-signing Steven Adams, extending both Fred VanVleet, Jabari Smith, signing Dorian Finney-Smith. They changed themselves. Who did I forget to?
Clint Capella. He's the best signing they have.
Yeah,
the most useless player in the NBA.
Yeah,
has two jobs.
There's a reason I forgot
catch
that.
A lob, and he can't do either on the Hawks.
There's a reason I forgot that. But I will say, I think the Houston Rockets are the one team that has completely transformed themselves into a good team with a young core that they could work with to a finals contender next year for sure. I think they're a top 2 or 3 team in the NBA next year with the addition of Kevin Durant. What Kevin Durant is going to be able to bring to that Houston team is the number one scorer option. They had a bunch of guys that I believe were, really good scorers or really inconsistent scorers. But guys that could put the ball in the basket. I mean, they had to. They were the second overall. They were the second seed in the West last year, but they didn't have the guy where they needed to go to down the stretch of that Golden State Houston series in the first round, which ultimately cost them from moving on. And that is Kevin Durant is that guy. He's 37, but he's still got that dog mentality in him. He's the best scorer in NBA history, in my opinion, in terms of everything that he can do. From mid-range, get to the basket, to his length, to his three-point shooting. I think he brings not only that, but also a little bit of veteran in him. I don't want to say veteran leadership because I don't think Kevin Durant's a leader, but I don't think he has to be a leader. I think this team is full of young leaders, like guys like Amin Thompson, Alfred Şengün. Then you got guys like Steven Adams and Dorian Finney-Smith who are a little bit older but have a lot more experience. This team is built perfectly. They're long. They can go small. They can go big. The wing spot, I believe, is the most important spot in basketball right now. They fill that spot perfectly with guys like Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, shooters everywhere, defenders everywhere. If Udoka doesn't win at least the Western Conference next year, or at least get to that spot where you're competing with a Denver or an Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals and competing to go play for an NBA championship, then he's the problem because that team is built beautifully.
I'm going to stick my Hawks glasses on here and say the Atlanta Hawks. It's not just because they're my favorite NBA team, but you look what they've done this offseason. Fire Landry Fields, who was one of the worst GMs I've ever seen in my lifetime. He's up there with Mickey Loomis about stupidity and running a franchise. Glad to see him go, but then you bring in Ansi Salah, who has done an outstanding job in just about, 3 short months of running the franchise. You talk about before the draft even happened, acquiring Kristaps Porzingis from the Boston Celtics. You end up having to trade Georges Niang, who was good at times last year for the Atlanta Hawks, but was a defensive liability And when you have Trae Young on the court alongside Georges Niang, you can't have two defensive liabilities on the court at the same time in this kind of NBA landscape. You also get off Terrence Mann's contract, send him and the number 22 overall pick to the Brooklyn Nets. And Terrence Mann is actually owed around $47 million over the next 3 years. So that's a horrible contract if you're the Atlanta Hawks. Sending him to Brooklyn is a steal. And you get Kristaps Porzingis, who dealt with a lot of injuries last year with Boston. There's a lot of question marks if he's going to be able to play at full strength ever again in his basketball career. But if he can, he is a perfect pairing alongside Trae Young. Set screen, pick and roll, pick and catch lobs. He is the perfect guy to put alongside Trae Young. Brings another three-point shooting threat on the court. And then you talk about what they did in the draft. They were slotted at 13. They were rumored to be wanting to take Malawach from Duke. He ended up going 10 to Phoenix. So they pivoted and were able to trade down 10 spots to 23 and pick up a 2026 unprotected first-round pick for the New Orleans Pelicans. And that's the most favorable between New Orleans and Milwaukee. And the way Milwaukee's looking right now, we don't know. But getting that pick, trading down just 10 spots, and getting what many confirmed was the same player in Asa Newell, it is masterful. The Pelicans just gifted us probably a lottery pick next year for the same player we wanted 10 spots later. Just a steal for Saleh at that slot. Talking about Asa Newell coming from Georgia, he also played high school basketball in the state of Georgia, so he hasn't left the state in his basketball career. He's similar to a guy in John Collins who Trae Young played with a little bit ago. A lob threat, unpolished three-point shooter. So was John Collins when he came out of Wake Forest to Atlanta. I see a lot of his game in Asa Newell, and if he can blossom into what John Collins was, I mean, John Collins at times was the second best player on the Atlanta Hawks. And then the free agency signings, Luke Kennard getting him for 1 year, $11 million, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker for 4 years, $62 million. Fill two needs. Luke Kennard, a spot-up three-point shooter, exactly what you need alongside Trae Young, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, lockdown defender, and also a prolific three-point shooter, shot 38% last year. But the big thing is he's a lockdown defender. And again, when you have Trae Young, who is a walking liability on the end of the court, getting a guy in him to come in and either replace Dyson Daniels, or if Trae Young has to come out of the game, and you have a lineup of Alexander Walker, Dyson Daniels, Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka Okongwu, or Kristaps Porzingis, whoever that might be, who's going to score on that lineup? That is just 5 great defenders in the basketball game at one time. Yeah. So what Anssi Saleh has done this offseason, he's turned this team on its head, managed to keep the star players like a Trae Young, like a Dyson Daniels, who won Most Improved last year, like a Ricochet, who was second in Rookie of the Year, and Jalen Johnson, who's coming off an injury. And people forget Jalen Johnson last year. Before he went down with that season-ending injury,
was good.
He was going to be an all-star. There's no doubt about that. And if he's able to return to that, and you're able to get the performance out of Porzingis and get Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be that sixth man off the bench in a weaker Eastern Conference where you have a lot of players with injuries, Tatum's out for the year, Halliburton's out for the year, the Bucks just put their team on a 180, releasing Damian Lillard and signing Miles Turner. I would argue, as it stands right now, the Atlanta Hawks are the second or third best team in the Eastern Conference, up there with the Cavs and the Knicks.
Wow.
Anssi Saleh has done it. Wow. This is the first time I can look at the Atlanta Hawks and be like, wow, we have a coherent roster and we're going to contend in the Eastern Conference. And I'm not talking about a play-in spot.
Yeah, since you were able to stick your nose out for your Atlanta Hawks, I've got to do it and stick my nose out for the Charlotte Hornets because just like the Atlanta Hawks, this is the first time it's the first time ever for the Hornets, but it's the first time in a while for the Hawks that you can see the direction that they're going. The culture has changed and you can see where they're going. Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee, new GM and new head coach for the Charlotte Hornets, have completely changed the culture and completely changed the expectation of what Charlotte basketball is. What they have done this past offseason, whether it's in the draft, whether it's through the trades, and whether it's through the free agent signings, and we are far from done at the time of this recording. The Hornets are far from done. I imagine the Hawks are far from done. It's kind of why I said the Rockets at first, because The Rockets probably are done. They don't have much money left. That roster is complete. But the Hornets are far from done. The Hawks are far from done. And everything looks completely different. So obviously for the Hornets perspective, the injuries have been the biggest thing for the Charlotte Hornets over the past few years. The injuries to Brandon Miller, the injuries to LaMelo Ball, even the injuries to Mark Williams. And then you talk about role players getting hurt like Grant Williams or Miles Bridges being out or stuff like that. And that's been a major problem. And that's not something that you can get around. That's not something that you can change because that, those happen. That is extremely unfortunate. We've talked about that before. But what the Hornets have done this past offseason, they've done more this past offseason. In fact, have done more transactions. So a transaction is whether a trade, whether a signing, whether it's a draft pick, anything. They've done more transactions this past offseason so far. We're not done. We're early July. We are not done. Than the past 4 combined. Than the past 4 combined. That's ridiculous. Mitch Kupchak was just a sitting paycheck writer for the GM for the Charlotte Hornets. Jeff Peterson has come in and has gotten down to work. Charles Lee obviously wants to change that culture, just like I mentioned. You talk about some of the things that they were able to do. Re-signing Trey Mann today, that's big. Versatile guard that was injured a lot last year, but when he was out there, a guy that averages double figures, shoots in the high 30% from 3. He's a guy that it will definitely be in this team moving forward. Talk about the draft, what they were able to do. I know the lottery didn't turn out exactly how Hornets fans wanted it to, but I think what the Hornets were finally able to do in a draft is address certain needs, and the need for 3-point shooting and the need for on-ball long guards, and then a need for a 5-man. That's exactly what the Hornets were able to do with their 4 draft picks in the draft, drafting 2 guys from Duke, Con Knickle and Sion James, getting Liam McNeely in a trade that I'll mention in just a moment, and then Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton, who was the 4-time Big East Player of the Year or something like that. Unbelievable rim protector at Creighton. Talking about the trades, the Mark Williams trade, getting 2 first-round picks for Mark Williams, who played less than 100 games in 4 years for the Charlotte Hornets. Just very, very injury prone. Obviously, we know about how the trade with the Lakers in February got rescinded, where the Hornets were about to get Dalton Connect and about to send Mark Williams to the Lakers. That one was rescinded because of Mark Williams' physical, because he's not a healthy player. But Phoenix, I don't know what Phoenix is doing. I don't really care. They gave us 2 first-round picks, one of them being Liam McNeely from UConn. They were able to pick late in the first round. And then getting a guy like Colin Sexton and 2 more second-round picks for Yusuf Nurkic, who was definitely not going to be on this year's Charlotte Hornets team anyway, but getting a guy like Colin Sexton, who when healthy was averaging like 18 a game last year for the Utah Jazz. You can see the direction that this Hornets roster is going in. You can see the aggressiveness from Jeff Peterson. I'm excited to see where we end up in August or in October when we're about ready to start playing and what the roster looks like. I know it's going to look very, very different than the past few years, and I'm excited for the future of the Charlotte Hornets franchise, for something I haven't said ever.
That statement has never been made in the what? How long have they existed as the Charlotte Hornets?
They turned into the Hornets, I believe, in 2013, I think.
Yeah, so 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years of despair for Gray and Hornets fans. But flipping to the other side of this, Gray, talking about the worst offseason thus far, who would you give that award to?
Oh.
I think of a lot of teams.
Yeah. Right now, probably the Bucks. I don't. What are they doing? What are they doing? So not only did they make Giannis mad by not telling him that they're going to completely release Damian Lillard, they're still going to have to pay him like $20 million a year over the next 4 years. You're still going to take up cap space there. But signing Miles Turner to a 4-year, over $100 million deal, that completely changes your franchise outlook. Because I'm sorry, Giannis and Miles Turner, that does not go together well on the court. I mean, it might, but I don't see it. I think Damian Lillard and Giannis would have been better. So now Dame is an unrestricted free agent, and now Giannis is pissed off at the franchise. I mean, they went from winning, they won the championship in 2021?
Yeah.
I would be shocked if we see Giannis on that team come October. And it's just about now what they can get for it, because now the draft has already passed. You can't get a high pick for it. You know, we heard things about maybe the Spurs trading for Giannis, maybe the Rockets. We heard the Warriors, stuff like that. But now, I mean, now you can't get a pick. What are you going to do now? You've got to go do a sign and trade probably with one of these teams that has a lot of assets to get rid of Giannis. I think the Bucks are a little bit in a scramble mode right now. That's one team that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on over the course of the next few months to see how that turns out, see where the Bucks are. Because as of right now, even if Giannis stays and is unhappy and he's there with Miles Turner, who's a really, really good center. I really like Miles Turner. Wanted him to come to the Hornets so bad for so many years, but obviously he goes to the Bucks. But that is a very interesting on the court team. So they traded Pat Connaughton to the Hornets for Vasily Micic. Like where's the direction going for the Bucks? That's one team that I'm like, I don't see where y'all are going, because y'all could be win now, but you are like throwing that away. I don't get that. You basically just threw it away when you threw away Damian Lillard, which is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and you could argue that Miles Turner is not any better than Brook Lopez, maybe even worse.
No.
If you watch the NBA Finals, Miles Turner was a no-show for majority of those games.
Yeah.
And that's just something to look at if you're the Milwaukee Bucks. For me, I look at two teams, the Los Angeles Lakers. What are we doing? Lose Dorian Finney-Smith, signed Jake LaRavia to a 2-year, $12 million deal, and it was reported that Rob Pelinka said that Jake LaRavia was his first phone call when free agency opened. Buddy, if that is your first phone call when free agency opened as the Los Angeles Lakers, you need to be in another franchise or another job.
I can see that being the Hornets' first call, but I couldn't see that being the Los Angeles Lakers' first call.
And then DeAndre Ayton, signing him, you need a center, but you land on the person that gives about as much effort as a homeless person when it comes to doing anything on the basketball court.
That's not going to fit well with Luka Doncic. Can you tell me a 3-man lineup with DeAndre Ayton, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic in regular season games that they're going to give over 50% effort?
You might as well just roll out the red carpet, part the Red Sea, and just escort every opposing player to the basket.
They might be the worst defense in the NBA next year.
If you're questioning DeAndre Ayton's effort, just go look up the viral clip of him playing the Nuggets. He is standing out of bounds, and Nikola Jokic gets like 4 or 5 putbacks at the rim. And about the third putback in, DeAndre Ayton realizes, oh my Lord, I'm the starting center for the Phoenix Suns. Maybe I need to play basketball and try to get a rebound.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton he's a guy that never had to give effort in high school. Was always the biggest and strongest, most talented player. Never had to give effort. Was still going to average 30 points, 40 points in high school. Same way when he was at Arizona. He was just bigger, stronger, and better than most of those people that he was playing when he was at Arizona. But you get to the NBA, you're playing guys like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid and Giannis coming to the basket, LeBron coming to the basket, and Kevin Durant. You got to switch on Kevin Durant. Oh, now you got to go switch on Shea. Now you got to go switch on Steph Curry. this is not the league for DeAndre Ayton. I think DeAndre Ayton was meant for the early 2000s years. Not effort-wise, but just by the way he plays, his style of play, he does not fit right now. And that signing, if that was the Lakers' first choice as a center for their season that honestly might be one of LeBron's last years on the Lakers, and that's your center to pair with your new superstar Luka Doncic, that's bad. That is so bad.
Forget it. The other team I was going to point out was the Brooklyn Nets. They entered the draft with 5 first-round picks. Don't trade up. Don't do anything. Draft all 5 players. Igor Dimon, 8th overall. Nolan Traore, 19th. Drake Powell, 22nd. Ben Seraph, 26th. And Danny Wolf, 27th.
That's bad.
Drake Powell in the first round is horrid. that is horrid.
As a North Carolina fan, that is terrible.
I mean, they hampered their roster because that's 5 spots taken up on a 15-man roster. Yeah. And
then you just traded for Michael Porter Jr.
That's what I was going to talk about too, is you trade Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. Michael, the possession ends with me, Porter Jr. is what I like to call him. And a 2032 first-round pick for Cam Johnson, who it was rumored y'all were wanting multiple first-round picks for.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Porter Jr. is not going to be a factor on your team in 5 to 10 years.
No.
That 2032 first more than likely won't have an effect on your team.
And you know how much better that makes the Nuggets?
Cam Johnson shot, I think, almost 40% last year from 3.
Oh,
he's not a shot chucker like Michael Porter Jr. The rookies on this team can forget touching the ball if Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas are on the court at the same time. The other 3 players can go ahead, walk back to the bench, and sit down on offense.
Yeah.
The Nets are another team where I have no idea what you're doing. Why are we spending 5 first-round picks? Why are we not trading out or packaging picks to move up? Why are we taking 5 roster spots up with 5 rookies where, in all likelihood, maybe 2 work out at the end of it all?
Yeah, if that. They didn't draft very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, Igor Dimon reach at 8. Nolan Traore could have been argued to reach at 19. We talked about Drake Powell. I like the Danny Wolf pick at 27.
I do too.
He's uber talented. That's probably the best pick they made with their last first-round pick.
Yeah.
Now that we're done with the NBA, Gray, and what's been going on in that offseason, we'll touch base with that as we get more big signings and teams kind of transform themselves and what we expect going into the upcoming NBA season. But let's talk about Auburn and Alabama football recruiting, because Auburn and Alabama are on 2 sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. One team is doing great, and the other team, it feels like Hugh Freeze is asleep at the wheel.
Yep.
I'm going to give you the road here, Gray. Lose C.D. Morgan to Alabama. 4-star receiver Denarius Gray flips to Kentucky, following Devin Carter flipping to Florida State. And now Auburn has no commits, wide receiver-wise, in the 2026 class. What's going on the Plains?
Well, Justin Ferguson and Justin Hookinson have had a lot to say about this, and I really like their opinion, and I'm going to steal it here. Auburn recruiting the past 2 cycles, as y'all know, a lot of them have been flips from other teams, but a lot of it has been very, very successful. Auburn's had 2 top 10 classes, 2 top 10 transfer portal classes. Auburn's been able to sell the future. Auburn's been able to sell early playing time. Auburn's been able to sell a promise to come in and contribute immediately, just like I said with early playing time. Auburn doesn't have that. Auburn doesn't have that chamber in their gun anymore. Auburn cannot sell early playing time to, especially a wide receiver. Auburn cannot sell early playing time to a defensive back. Auburn honestly can't sell early playing time to a defensive lineman because they just signed 5 4-star or better defensive linemen in the 2025 class. So that early playing time chamber that Hugh Freeze and his staff had, take that out of the window, because you can't promise, Devin Carter or Denarius Gray or somebody like that, hey, you're going to come in and play, as a freshman or you're going to come in and play even as a sophomore because Cam Coleman's got 3 years of eligibility left. Perry Thompson's got 3 years of eligibility left. Eric Singleton has 2 years of eligibility left. Sam Turner has 4 years of eligibility left. Malcolm Simmons has 3 years of eligibility left. You have wide receivers, and you only have so many out there at the same time, and you also have built quite an offensive line. This will be Auburn's best offensive line in 10 years. And you've had really good classes over the past 2 cycles at the offensive line. Same thing, just like I said, with the defensive line. You signed 5 4-star or better defensive linemen in that 2025 class. 2 of them were 5 stars, Malik Autry and Jared Smith, both from the state of Alabama. And then even at linebacker, you talk about you signed 2 or 3 in the 2024 class, including 5-star DeMarcus Riddick, who you flipped from Georgia. And then you signed a few more in the 2024 class, like Elijah Melendez, 4-star, who apparently he's going to play this year, that you flipped from Miami. And then you've got a defensive back room. I mean, I'm just going based on position. You got a defensive back room that the corners and safeties, I mean, you got corners in this defensive back room that are getting even the transfers that came in. Auburn had 2 transfer, Radon Strader from Miami of Ohio and Rayshawn Pleasant from Tulane. Those guys are getting preseason All-American honors for this year. They got multiple years of eligibility left. And I'm like, who do they play over? Do they play over Kayan Lee? Do they play over Jay Crawford? Do they play over Champ Anthony? I don't see that. And then you just signed 2 of the top 7 safeties in the country of the 2025 class last year. So there really is no playing time anymore. All right, so now you try and pivot to, well, we're selling what we're doing on the field. Well, Auburn doesn't have that chamber right now. Hugh Freeze went 6-7 in 2023. He went 5-7 in 2024. Auburn doesn't have that ability to sell that right now. All these teams, and I'm going to talk in a minute how the House settlement has affected this a little bit as well. But Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, all these, even Florida State. And I know they went 2-10 last year, but Mike Norvell has won there before in the past. He has that chamber to say, hey, let's get back to this. Or Alabama's like, let's keep this going. Georgia's like, let's keep this going. You're the next guy in line. Come in, help us win. Auburn doesn't have that chamber anymore. Hugh Freeze has got to win on the football field. He's got the team to do it this year. He's got the team. He's got the schedule to do it this year. I guarantee it's not even like I'm predicting this. Guarantee if Auburn wins, I ain't saying they win a lot. I say 8 games this year. Recruiting completely goes back to what we saw, the past 2 cycles. You're behind now because you don't have that early playing time chamber. You're not ahead of the game like you were coming into last season or even coming into 2023. But now you've got to show that with that talent in those past 2 top 10 classes and 2 top 10 transfer portal classes, that you can win at Auburn. And we've seen people do it. We've seen people do it with less. Gus Malzahn did it with less. Until you Tommy Tuberville did it with less. So it's not like Auburn's a place you can't win. It's not like Auburn's a place that can't recruit. Hugh Freeze has shown his ability to recruit. He just has lost the chamber that he was using to recruit. And to get that back, or to get enough chambers back to start landing some of these top guys again and keeping your commits, you got to win. You got to win games. I believe that Baylor game it's not a must win because Auburn could still have a very successful season if you lose to Baylor. But that Baylor game is so important for momentum. It is so important. And it's way more important now than it was 3 months ago because we're seeing the trajectory of the recruiting go down. And we know as fans, and we know as human beings that you're not going to be, as somebody who's getting pulled to whatever school, you're not going to be attracted to a school that can't sell you on one or the other of early playing time. Hey, come help us. We're going to turn this thing around. Or, hey, come win a championship with us. Auburn didn't have either of those. They had one. They have to be able to get the other to be able to get back to what they were doing on the recruiting trail. And they can easily do that. It's just going to take winning football games. You got the talent to do it. Go out and win football games. I do want to mention how the house settlement has kind of changed just a little bit. Look, there's a cap now. There's basically a salary cap on football teams, on college football teams, which is definitely going to help lower level football teams who have the money, but lower level football teams stay at the same level to recruit. But it's also going to show how valuable a recruit is to a school. And that comes back to that early playing time. There's like for instance, I'm going to take the two wide receiver flips that Auburn just had, the two recent wide receiver flips. Devin Carter flipping to Florida State and Denarius Gray flipping to Kentucky. Both of those guys now are going to be able to get the exact same amount of money as they would Auburn. Previously, without the house settlement, and don't get me wrong, the house settlement, I have mixed opinions on it. I think it's a good thing. But you got to get it right. But now, previously, Auburn could have outpaid Kentucky. Auburn probably could have outpaid Florida State. Or Florida State could have, buckled up and paid more, either way. Now, that value to the recruit, that schools showing the value, and this comes back to the early playing time of, hey, we need you now. We need you now. That's going to hurt teams that have had recent success in recruiting and have had guys playing as freshmen and true sophomores and stuff like that. That's going to really hurt those teams because, even though we can outbid Kentucky, we're not going to overshoot for a 4-star wide receiver when he's not even going to play until he's a redshirt sophomore anyway. It's not worth it to Auburn. It's not worth it to Denarius Gray. And it's completely understandable on his side. Kentucky's like, hey, you're going to come in here and start as a freshman. You're going to get the same amount of money as you are over there, but you're going to play, and you're going to be vital to our success. Well, that's attractive to young men, of course. And then you got the other side of it, where this is just like pro sports, and it's basically what college is now, is semi-pro. But the schools and the administrations that are run the best will have the most success recruiting. Simple as that. That's nothing to do with winning. Has nothing to do with early playing time. Has nothing to do with competition, or honestly has nothing to do with like which coach is where or how a coach is doing. Can you budget it right? Can we afford this? Can we do this but not this? The organizations that are run perfectly, those are the schools that are going to have extreme success moving forward. And those right now, you're seeing those teams have the success. You're seeing Alabama have success. You're seeing Georgia have extreme success. You're seeing Ohio State have success. You're seeing Texas have success. those are the schools that at the top of the head chain, meaning the athletic directors, the boosters, all the things are intertwined. Those are the schools that are going to be the best. And I would not say Auburn's anywhere close to that. I would say they could be. Auburn easily could, because you got the tradition, you got the history, you got the passionate fans, you got you're in the SEC, you got the rivalries, you're in a great location, but I would not say over the past few years or whatever that the Auburn football program has been run well as the GM side. That's why we're seeing all these teams hire these types of roles like GMs and stuff. So right now, those mid-level schools who can sell the early playing time and the money in their cap and run it the right way are going to have success. And Auburn's not in either one. Auburn's not in either one of those.
Middle of the pack.
So you're dead center of the pack right now. And to get out of that, funk, you just got to win football games, man.
One team that's not struggling in the state of Alabama is the Crimson Tide. You talked about having a GM, Gray. I would think Alabama has the best GM in college football, being Courtney Morgan. What he has been able to do in such a short time at Alabama, helping out Kalen DeBoer and having Nick Saban help on recruiting visits as well. You can't ask for anything better. 11 prospects have committed since June 9th, including 5-star Cenarian Morgan. He's the number 2 receiver in the class, number 1 in the state of Alabama. Xavier Griffin, a linebacker, number 1 linebacker in the class. Cornerback Jordan Edmonds, number 1 cornerback. And then getting who is arguably a 5-star some sites. Some sites have him as a 4-star. The running back Xavier Crowell from he's number 2 in the state of Alabama, prospect-wise, right behind Cenarian Morgan. So you have 4 5-stars committed right now. And in this landscape of college football, I'm not even sure how Alabama's swinging that, having that high of prospects committed to you with the budget they're handling with right now. And you also got some other players, 4-star offensive tackle Sam Utu, a quarterback commit, Jet Tamola, running back Javari Barnett, and then cornerback Ryle Kelly. 3 of those guys being flips from other schools. I'm just not sure how Alabama is swinging this when it comes to the NIL. But the job that Courtney Morgan and Kalen DeBoer and even Nick Saban have done constructing this roster post Nick Saban retirement has been awesome. Bringing in these guys next year, and some players are going to be gone. Deontay Lawson, he's going to be out of eligibility. Tim Keenan will be gone. Both those guys being mainstays on the defense this year. You lose Malachi Moore last year. Keon Sabb will probably end up in the draft. Looking at Damani Jackson, he'll be gone. But the cornerback room is just set up awesome. Dijon Lee, 6'4" corner. That's rare nowadays to see that type of height and that type of talent at that position. Bring in the number 1 corner next year. It's an embarrassment of riches for the Crimson Tide under Kalen DeBoer, where a lot of people said he wasn't going to come in and have the same issues that Brian Harsin had. And Brian Harsin's issue wasn't the same. His issue was he didn't recruit. He didn't care.
He didn't try. Yeah.
He didn't try. For Kalen DeBoer, he tries, and you see the success he's having. And you talked about it with Auburn, Gray, where Auburn doesn't have the wins to show or the pedigree when it comes to certain things. Alabama has that. Mm-hmm. They won under Nick Saban. He's helped recruit. He can show that to them. He can put his rings on the table like Pat Riley did with LeBron James and say, "Do you want one of these? Come to Alabama." Kalen DeBoer, while he struggled in his first year at Alabama, losing, especially in that final game to Michigan where he shouldn't have, he got to the national championship at Washington, which is a much more difficult program to get to the national championship in. So he has that type of talking point to show recruits. Well, I understand we didn't do as well as we did last year, but look what I've done in my other years at different programs, Fresno State, Washington, being the offensive coordinator at Indiana. Look at the success I've had as a head coach. Look at the program pedigree. And to top it all off, you have the money to pay these 5-stars to come to your school. Mm-hmm. It's just outstanding, the job that Courtney Morgan and Kalen DeBoer have done building this roster. And they're not done yet. We're only in July. There's no telling what could happen, and that's good or bad. One of these 5 stars could decommit next week. That's the landscape of college football. Georgia could come in tomorrow and offer Xavier Griffin, who's from Georgia, double the money Alabama's offering, and I'm sure he would just leave. That's the landscape we're in.
Yeah.
I don't want to get caught up in, oh my gosh, Alabama's got 4 or 5 stars in July of 2025 when they're not going to get on campus till at the earliest January of 2026. So there's multiple months for these players to make the decision. Well, I'm going to flip. I'm getting offered $4 million at Georgia where Alabama's offering me $2 million. That's the landscape of college football. But for Kalen DeBoer to navigate it the way he's done and to bring in the type of recruits he's brought in, I'm excited for Bama football. I was worried after last season, the way it ended and some of the issues we were looking at when it came to certain position groups. But Kalen DeBoer has addressed those in the transfer portal for the upcoming season and then for the classes for next season as well. So great job for Kalen DeBoer in year 2. And Gray, before we wrap up here, let's spend a few minutes here talking about the big thing I teased at the beginning of the show. College basketball was announced. They're going to be having a video game. EA Sports will be the company behind it. They make the football video game for college football. Huge success for them last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if I had to guess, they probably made bukus of money off. I mean, there's no telling what they made off of it. And there's no telling what they're going to make off this game because this will be the first game since NCAA 10 with Blake Griffin on the cover. And many would argue they're excited that EA is making it rather than 2K, considering the issues 2K has had with basketball games over the year and their microtransactions and some of the gameplay issues. And before you kind of get into your spiel here, Gray, this game won't be releasing until 2028, 2029. That's the big downfall here is they announced it a little early. We have a little bit time to wait, but I'd rather wait than I have the game at all.
100%. 100%. And I think people kind of had an uproar about that, but people don't remember, well, college football 25 was announced in 2021. That was announced in 2021 that they were going to make that. That was this announcement. So it's actually on pace to be faster than college football 25 is. But no, you're right. I would much rather wait and have this game be perfect. I just hope that the state continues their success in basketball. That way, when we get this game, it'll be even better because that is so exciting. I love basketball games. I get more riled up at basketball games because I played basketball. I know basketball a lot more than I know football. So I love basketball games. 2K drives me crazy though. So I can't do that. So I'm glad this is EA. And I know they had issues with NBA Live and stuff like that, but I think they're going to completely redo this team, just like the EA did with College Football 25. They didn't just bring in the Madden team to do a reskin of Madden. No, they brought in a whole new team who loves that game just as much as possible. I think they're going to do the same thing with this game. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, I hope this state continues their basketball success. That way, by the time 2028 rolls around, Stephen Pearl versus Nate Oates will be awesome.
And the funny thing is, some of the changes they made in college football are actually being implemented in this year's Madden. So that just goes to tell you how important it is to have new faces, new eyes on different games,
and
how landscape changing they can be. I would pay money for 2K to have the same idea, to realize we don't need to have the same 10, 15, however many people it takes to make the game every year.
Every year.
You need new eyes on it.
Yeah.
You need new eyes on it every year. I don't need to be hearing from Mike Wang every year. I don't need to be hearing from Ryan 2K every year. I need to be hearing from different people that have had influence on this game in a positive way. I don't want to see negative ways, of course.
Yeah.
That's what these games need. And college basketball, I love NCAA 10. I would play it if the gameplay wasn't so horrid comparing it to PS5 games.
Yeah.
But it just is. I talked about this, I think, with Nathan a couple weeks ago. If you can have the March Madness type of format when it comes to like a dynasty thing, play it with your friends, I'm gonna be. If I didn't have a job, I'd be glued to that game 24/7.
Oh my goodness! Take my money. Take my money.
Well, that'll be all for today, Gray. I appreciate everyone for listening and watching Students of the Game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.